Get out. Now. This is a public lobby, not for your kind. Move.
I have every right.
Rights? Nappy hair? Crusty skin? You reek skin?
Shelter. Crawl back to whatever hole you came from.
You don't know who I am.
I don't care who you are. You're a roach in my lobby. Now scam, before I step on you.
GM.
3 weeks as manager and Derek Lawson already owned the place. At least he thought he did.
She didn't flinch.
Her eyes burned wet, but her voice held. The same way her grandfathers did when they told him no hotel would ever carry a black man's name. She walked out, quietly, without a word. He didn't know that was the last door he'd ever open as manager. He didn't know what her last name was. And he didn't know it was written in gold, 10 feet behind him. The lobby of the Owens Grand Hotel held its breath. 14 people had watched the whole thing. A couple at the front desk, a bellhop gripping a luggage cart, 3 guests on the leather sofas. Not one of them said a word. Not one of them moved. The chandelier above, 4,000 pounds of hand-cut Viennese crystal, kept scattering tiny rainbows across the marble floor. The gardenias in the lobby vases kept smelling sweet. The world kept turning, as if nothing had happened. Derek Lawson straightened his cuffs. 34 years old, 3 weeks into the biggest job of his career. General manager of the flagship Owens Grand, 212 rooms, a rooftop bar written up in Condé Nast, and a reputation he was already rewriting in his own image. He'd clawed his way up from a bell desk in Tucson. 4 hotels in 9 years, each one bigger, each title louder. When the recruiter called about the Owens Grand, he bought a new suit before the interview ended. In 3 weeks, he'd fired the assistant general manager, a black woman named Vivian Porter, 12 years on the job, for restructuring. He'd rewritten the dress code, sent a memo about maintaining the visual standard of all public-facing spaces. The woman in the linen dress did not meet the visual standard. That was enough. Derek turned to Nora Sinclair at the front desk. "That's how you handle it," he said. "You let one in, more show up, like roaches." He walked toward the staircase, whistling. Nora didn't move. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something worse. She'd worked here 4 years. She'd seen the photos on the company intranet. She'd read every quarterly newsletter. She knew the face of every person in the leadership chain, from the regional VP all the way up. Her eyes drifted to the wall behind the concierge station. Gilded letters carved into stone, 5 of them, there since 1962. Owens. She looked at the revolving door, still spinning, then at the name on the wall, then at the door. She picked up the phone. Her fingers dialed the regional office before her brain caught up. When Charlotte Hayes answered, Nora said only one sentence. "He just threw her out." The line went quiet for 3 seconds. Then Charlotte said a word Nora had never heard a VP use before. Charlotte Hayes had been a regional VP for 11 years. She'd handled noise complaints from senators, a kitchen fire during a governor's fundraiser, and a plumbing disaster that flooded the presidential suite 40 minutes before a Saudi prince checked in. None of that prepared her for this phone call. "Which woman?" Charlotte asked. But she already knew. Her voice had gone flat, the way it did when something couldn't be undone. "The one from the newsletter," Nora said. "The one whose face is on the wall in the corporate office. He called her a roach, Charlotte, in front of everyone." Charlotte closed her eyes, pressed her thumb and forefinger into the bridge of her nose and held them there. "Does he know?" "He has no idea. Don't tell him. Don't tell anyone. I need to make a call." She hung up, stared at her phone for 10 seconds, then dialed the one number in her contacts she had never used, the direct line to Brielle Owens. Brielle answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes after something has already broken inside and been welded back together by sheer will. "I know why you're calling, Charlotte. Ms. Owens, I am so deeply sorry. Don't. Not yet. I need you to listen." Charlotte listened. "I want every personnel file Derek Lawson has touched since day one. I want the termination paperwork he filed on Vivian Porter. I want the guest complaint logs. All of them, not the cleaned-up versions he sends to corporate, the originals. And I want the security footage from the lobby, every camera angle. Can you get those? Yes, ma'am, all of it. Good. And Charlotte, don't warn him. Don't transfer him. Don't change a single thing about his day. I want to see exactly who he is when he thinks nobody's watching. The line went dead. Charlotte sat still for a full minute. Then she opened her laptop and started pulling files. Brielle Owens didn't become a billionaire by shouting. She became one by remembering. Her grandfather, Harold Owens, built the first Owens Hotel in 1962. He started with a $400 loan, a piece of land nobody wanted, and 2 hands that had been turned away from every hotel lobby south of the Mason-Dixon line. They didn't just refuse him rooms, they refused him water. They refused him a seat in the dining room. A manager in Birmingham once called the police because Harold asked to use the restroom. He was 26 years old. He built his own hotel, a 12-room lodge on a county road outside Atlanta. He painted it himself, laid the tile himself. His wife, Eleanor, sewed the curtains and folded every towel. On opening night, every room was booked. All 12 guests were black. No other hotel in the county would take them. Harold built a second, then a third. By the time he died in 1989, there were 6 Owens properties across 4 states. Each one carried his name on the front wall. Each one had the same rule carved into the staff handbook. Every guest is someone who chose us. Treat them like it. His son Thomas expanded the chain to 10. And when Thomas suffered a stroke at 58, his daughter stepped in. Brielle was 31, fresh out of Wharton, the only person in the boardroom who looked like the guests her grandfather had built those hotels for. The board doubted her. The press ignored her. A rival CEO told a reporter, on the record, that the chain would fold within 18 months. Brielle doubled the portfolio in a decade. 14 luxury properties, 9 states, a $2.1 billion valuation. Forbes profiled her twice. The Wall Street Journal called her the most important hotelier most Americans have never heard of. She liked it that way. She didn't do press tours. She didn't sit on panels. She did something else. She walked into her own hotels, unannounced, underdressed, unrecognized, and watched. She called them truth walks. No entourage, no heels, no name tag. Just a black woman in a simple dress sitting in a lobby, seeing how long it took for someone to decide she didn't belong. Most of the time, her staff passed. They smiled, offered water, asked if she needed anything. Small kindnesses that told her everything she needed to know. Today was not most of the time. Today, a man her own company had hired looked at her skin, her hair, her clothes, and called her a roach. Threatened to drag her out of a building her grandfather had painted with his own hands. Brielle sat in her car across the street, engine off, book in her lap. She wasn't reading, she was making a list. She was very good at lists. Derek Lawson slept well that night. He always did. The kind of man who throws a woman out of a hotel lobby and whistles on his way upstairs doesn't lose sleep. He gains confidence. In his mind, he hadn't done something wrong, he'd done something necessary. By Wednesday morning, 2 days after the incident, he'd already forgotten her face. She was just another problem he'd solved, another stain he'd wiped clean. What he hadn't forgotten was the feeling. The lobby going quiet, the staff watching, the authority rolling off him like heat from asphalt. He liked that feeling. He wanted more of it. So he made a new rule. He called it the Lobby Protocol. 1 page printed and pinned to the staff break room wall next to the new motivational poster. The language was corporate enough to survive a glance from HR, but every employee who read it understood exactly what it meant. All non-registered individuals occupying public-facing spaces for more than 10 minutes must be approached and asked to present a room key or valid reservation confirmation. Failure to comply warrants immediate escort from the premises. Translation: if they don't look like they belong, move them out. The staff knew who they meant. Nobody had to ask. Derek wasn't done. That same morning, he pulled 2 black housekeepers into his office, closed the door, told them their natural hair was unprofessional and visually inconsistent with guest expectations. He gave them 1 week to fix the situation. One of them, a woman named Clara, had worn her hair in braids for 14 years. 3 managers before Derek. Not one had ever said a word about it. Clara went home that night and cried into her bathroom mirror for an hour. He moved the only black front desk agent, Tanya Wallace, 6 years on the job, to the overnight shift. "Better fit for your skills," he told her. Tanya had earned the highest guest satisfaction scores for 3 consecutive quarters. She'd received 11 handwritten thank you notes from guests that year alone. Derek didn't read any of them. He didn't need to. He'd already decided where she belonged. Then he went to the staff break room and took down the photos of Harold Owens. 4 of them. Harold breaking ground in 1962. Harold shaking hands with his first guest. Harold and Eleanor on opening night. Her in a blue dress she'd sewn herself. Him in the only suit he owned. Harold cutting the ribbon at the 5th property, 73 years old, tears on his cheeks. Derek stacked them face down on a shelf, replaced them with a single poster. Excellence is a habit. Nobody stopped him. Not one person. Vivian Porter found out about all of it 3 days after being fired. She was sitting in her apartment, the one she'd finally moved into after 7 years of 60-hour weeks at the Owens Grand. Assistant General Manager. Employee of the Year twice. She'd trained half the staff. She knew which faucet leaked in room 614, which elevator stuck between floors on humid days, which vendor overcharged on linens every March. Derek fired her on his 4th day. Called it restructuring. Didn't look her in the eye. He was already measuring her office for new furniture before she'd finished packing her desk. Now, sitting on her couch in sweatpants at 2 in the afternoon, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Vivian, this is Brielle Owens." Silence. A sharp inhale, the sound of a coffee cup being set down too hard. "Ms. Owens, how did you—" "I know what happened to you. I know why, and I need you to tell me everything." Vivian talked for 47 minutes without stopping. She told Brielle about the hair policy, about Tanya's demotion, about the photos in the break room. She told her about guest complaints Derek had buried. A black couple from Philadelphia told their confirmed suite was no longer available and offered a room next to the service elevator. A family reunion booking for 32 people, all black, quietly canceled for scheduling conflicts. Vivian had checked the calendar herself. No conflicts existed. The ballroom sat empty that entire weekend. "He's not just rude, Ms. Owens," Vivian said. Her voice broke on the last word. "He's systematic. He's building a wall and calling it a standard." Brielle was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was steady as stone. "Write everything down. Names, dates, room numbers, every conversation you remember." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let him show me exactly who he is, and then I'm going to show him who I am." That same Wednesday afternoon, Brielle sent 2 people to the Owens Grand. Grace, mid-40s, black, tailored blazer, leather briefcase, walked in at 2 p.m., confirmed reservation, corner suite, prepaid in full. Check-in took 22 minutes, 2 forms of ID, credit card for incidentals, backup credit card, phone number for verification purposes. Grace watched a white couple ahead of her check in with a single driver's license in 4 minutes. Her room faced the parking structure. The reservation specified City View. She called the front desk. All City View rooms were occupied. Grace checked the booking link Brielle had provided. 7 City View rooms sat empty. Elliot, white, mid-30s, khakis, polo shirt, no reservation, walked in at 3 p.m., sat in the same wingback chair where Brielle had been thrown out 2 days earlier. He stayed for 45 minutes. Nobody asked him to leave. Nobody asked for a room key. At minute 12, a server brought him a complimentary water and a warm smile. At minute 30, the concierge stopped by to ask if he needed dinner recommendations. Brielle received both reports by 6 p.m. She read them in her car across the street. Then again. Then a third time, slowly circling details with a red pen. Each circle was a fact. Each fact was a nail. She picked up the phone and called her attorney. "Schedule the meeting, Friday morning, the ballroom, all staff, no exceptions." What's on the agenda? One item. What's the item? Me. Thursday morning. Derek Lawson arrived at the hotel at 7:15 a.m., 15 minutes early the way he always did. He liked to walk the lobby before the day shift started, check the flowers, straighten the magazines, run his hand along the reception desk like a man running his fingers over the hood of a car he just bought. Today felt good. The lobby was quiet. The marble gleamed. The chandelier caught the first light through the east windows and scattered it across the floor in soft diamonds. His hotel, his rules, his kingdom. He had no idea that 3 blocks east, in a room at the Langford with a clear sightline to his front entrance, Brielle Owens was already awake. She'd checked in the night before under a name he'd never heard. She'd barely slept. Not from anger, from focus. Grace and Elliot's mystery shopper reports were spread across the bed. Vivian's testimony, 14 pages, single-spaced, sat on the nightstand. Charlotte's midnight email had delivered every personnel file Derek had ever touched. Brielle had read them all. Derek's hiring file was thin. Impressive on paper. 4 properties, rising titles, strong revenue numbers. But the references were vague. Results-driven. Takes initiative. Doesn't hesitate to make hard calls. Language that sounded professional until you realized it was code for something else entirely. Nobody had called his previous hotels to ask why he'd left. Nobody checked the turnover rates under his management. Nobody noticed that at every property Derek ran, the number of black and brown employees dropped by 30% within his first year. Brielle noticed. She pulled up the financial reports he'd submitted to corporate. 3 weeks of numbers. At first glance, strong. Occupancy up. Revenue per room trending higher. Cost cuts across the board. The kind of numbers that make a regional VP nod and move on. But Brielle had been reading hotel financials since she was 23 years old. She knew where to look. And more importantly, she knew what should be there and wasn't. The guest complaint log, the official version Derek forwarded to corporate, listed 4 complaints in 3 weeks. A slow elevator. A noisy ice machine. Minor things. Nothing about service quality. Nothing about guest treatment. Nothing about discrimination. The original log, the one Charlotte pulled from the hotel's internal system before Derek could scrub it, listed 19 complaints in the same period. 11 were from black or brown guests. 3 mentioned Derek by name. 2 used the word hostile. 1 used the word afraid. 15 complaints. Deleted. Erased. Like the people who wrote them didn't exist. Brielle set that page aside and picked up Vivian's testimony again. Read it slower this time. Stopped at page 7. A section about a conversation Vivian overheard on Derek's second day. He'd been on the phone in his office. Door open, feet on the desk, laughing. Vivian was passing in the hallway and stopped. "Yeah, the place needs work," he'd said. "Too many of them on staff. I'll clean it up. Give me 6 months." Too many of them. Vivian had written the sentence 3 times in her testimony. Once in the body, once underlined in the margin, and once more at the end in a handwritten note. I heard it clearly. He was not talking about the budget. Brielle closed the folder. She stood at the window. The morning sun hit the limestone facade of the Owens Grand and turned it gold. She could see the front entrance from here, the revolving door, the dark shape of a man moving through the lobby like he owned every square foot of it. She could see the name above the door. Even from 3 blocks away, the letters were clear. Owens. Her phone buzzed. Text from her attorney. Friday confirmed. Ballroom reserved. Staff notified. Mandatory all hands. 9 a.m. No agenda distributed. Derek asking questions. Brielle typed back 1 word. Good. She spent the rest of Thursday building the case. Not because she needed more evidence. She had enough to fire Derek 10 times over. But Brielle didn't believe in simply firing people. She believed in showing them exactly what they'd done. In front of every person they'd done it to. She built a presentation, slide by slide. Grace's 22-minute check-in next to the white couple's 4 minutes. Room assignment records showing every black guest systematically downgraded. The real complaint log beside Derek's sanitized version, side by side. The photos he'd removed from the break room. The hair policy memo. Tanya's transfer paperwork with her satisfaction scores attached. Vivian's 14 pages. Each slide was a mirror, and every mirror faced one direction. She called Charlotte at 8 p.m. Is he suspicious? He thinks it's a performance review. He's been preparing a speech about his first month achievements. He's proud of himself, Ms. Owens. Brielle almost smiled. Almost. Let him prepare.
She hung up.
Turned off the light. Lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. She didn't sleep for a long time, but when she finally did, she slept the way her grandfather used to sleep. Deeply, completely. The way a person sleeps when they know exactly what tomorrow holds and they are not afraid of it. Friday, 6:47 a.m. Derek Lawson stood in front of his bathroom mirror and practiced his speech. In just 3 weeks, I've increased occupancy by 4%, reduced operational overhead by 11%, and implemented a guest-facing protocol that has already improved lobby presentation standards. He said it twice, adjusted his tie, said it a third time with a slight pause before standards for emphasis. He liked the way that word sounded in his mouth, heavy, final, like a door closing. He'd been told the meeting was a routine all hands, a check-in from corporate. Charlotte Hayes had been vague on the details, but that didn't bother him. What mattered was that the ballroom was booked, the full staff would be present, and Derek Lawson would be standing at the front of the room, where he belonged. He chose his best suit, navy blue, white shirt, gold cufflinks his father had given him. The shoes from Milan, the ones he saved for days when people needed to look up at him. He checked the mirror one final time. Perfect, powerful, ready. Today was his day. At 7:30 a.m., 3 blocks east, Brielle Owens was already dressed. She wore the same linen dress, the oatmeal one, the one she'd been wearing when Derek called her a roach and told her to crawl back to whatever hole she came from. She pulled it from the closet and held it up against the hotel room light for a long moment before putting it on. She chose it on purpose. She stood in front of the mirror at the Langford and looked at herself. 58 years old, 5'4", no jewelry, no makeup, no heels, no armor, except the kind that lives in the spine. Her phone buzzed. Wallace Grant, her attorney. Team ready. 3 attorneys on site by 8:15. Documents printed and bound. 4 copies. Presentation loaded on the ballroom AV. Vivian Porter confirmed. She'll be there. Brielle typed. Security footage, cued. Lobby camera, Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. Clear angle, full audio. His face, his words, everything. Brielle set the phone down. She picked up the paperback, the same one she'd been reading when Derek threw her out, and slid it into her bag. She didn't need it, but she wanted him to see it. She wanted that one small detail to land like a pin dropping in a silent room. At 8:45 a.m., the staff of the Owens Grand filed into the ballroom. They came in waves, housekeepers still smoothing their uniforms, front desk agents checking their phones, kitchen staff smelling like coffee and stainless steel, maintenance workers in boots, the overnight team, bleary-eyed and confused, still in their work clothes. 87 employees, every single one. The room hummed with low, nervous conversation. Nobody knew what this was about. The only information they'd received was a single email from Charlotte Hayes. Mandatory all hands, Friday, 9 a.m., ballroom, no exceptions, no agenda. No agenda. 2 words that made everyone uneasy. Nora Sinclair sat in the 3rd row. She hadn't slept since Tuesday. She sat with her hands folded tight in her lap and her eyes locked on the ballroom doors. She knew what was coming. She was the only one in the room who did. Clara, the housekeeper Derek had ordered to fix her hair, sat in the back row. She'd worn her braids today, every single one of them, freshly done. She didn't fully understand why she'd spent 2 hours on them last night. It just felt like something she needed to do. Tanya Wallace sat beside her. 4 hours of sleep. Dark circles under her eyes. The overnight shift Derek had banished her to was killing her slowly. She stared straight ahead and said nothing. At 8:55, Derek walked in, chin up, shoulders squared. The slight roll in his step of a man who believed every room was built for his entrance. He carried a leather portfolio, his prepared remarks. 3 copies, one for himself, one for Charlotte, one for the file. Because Derek Lawson documented his victories. He took his position at the front, adjusted the microphone, tapped it twice, surveyed the room the way a king surveys a court. "Morning, everyone. Thanks for being here."
He opened his portfolio,
Cleared his throat. The ballroom doors opened behind him. He didn't turn right away. He was mid-sentence, something about a strong start to a new chapter, when the words died in his throat. Because the room had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of people listening, the airless, frozen quiet of people seeing something they weren't prepared for. Every head was looking past him, at the doors. Derek turned.
Brielle Owens stood in the doorway.
Same linen dress, same flat shoes, same paperback tucked under her arm. Behind her, 3 people in dark suits carrying briefcases. Wallace Grant, her lead attorney, on her left. Charlotte Hayes on her right, face tight, jaw locked. And one more person, Vivian Porter, standing straight, shoulders back, holding a manila folder against her chest like a shield.
Derek's smile didn't drop.
Not yet, but it froze, stuck halfway between confidence and something he didn't have a name for yet. His brain was processing. The dress, the face, the book. He'd seen this woman before. Tuesday, the lobby, the stray. "Excuse me, this is a private staff meeting." Charlotte stepped forward. Her voice cut through the ballroom like glass breaking. "Derek, sit down."
2 words.
The temperature in the room fell. 87 people held their breath. Clara's hand found Tanya's in the back row and squeezed. Derek looked at Charlotte, at the woman in the linen dress, at the attorneys, at Vivian, a woman he'd fired, standing 10 feet away looking at him without blinking. His portfolio was still open in his hand. He sat down. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents.
Brielle Owens walked to the front of the room.
She didn't rush. She didn't speak. She moved past Derek, past the chair he'd just dropped into, and stood behind the podium. She set her paperback on the surface, placed both hands flat on either side of it, and looked out at 87 faces.
Some recognized her.
Nora Sinclair, 3rd row, had both hands pressed over her mouth. A bellhop named Jalen, 19 years old at the hotel since the day he turned 18, gripped his armrests until the plastic creaked. But most of the staff had never met Brielle Owens in person. They knew the name on the wall. They didn't know the face. Derek sat 3 feet to her left. His eyes had found the book, the paperback. He'd seen it before. And the dress, the linen, the oatmeal color. Something cold was crawling up his spine. A recognition that hadn't fully arrived but was getting closer with every heartbeat. Brielle turned to the projection screen and pressed a button.
The first slide.
A photograph. Harold Owens, 1962, standing in front of a half-built wooden frame with a paintbrush in one hand and a bucket in the other. Beneath it, Harold Owens built the first Owens Hotel because no one would give him a room. She let the image sit for 5 full seconds. Then she spoke.
"My name is Brielle Owens.
My grandfather built this hotel with $400, 2 hands, and the belief that every human being, regardless of what they looked like, deserved a place where they would be treated with dignity." She paused, let the name land, watched it move through the room like a wave, the whispers, the gasps, the turning heads, watched it reach Derek, watched his jaw go slack. Click.
3 weeks ago, I walked into this lobby.
I sat in a chair by the east window. I was reading this book. She held up the paperback. And a man I had never met, a man my company hired, walked up to me and told me to get out. Click. Security footage filled the screen. The lobby. Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. High definition, clear audio, every syllable. Get out, now! This is a public lobby. Not for your kind, move! 87 people watched the screen without blinking. Derek on the footage, leaning in, finger pointing, grinning. Derek in the chair, motionless, pale, shrinking. Nappy hair, crusty skin. You reek. Clara pressed her fist against her mouth. Tanya's eyes were closed. A cook in the 4th row whispered, "Oh my God." under his breath. "You're a roach in my lobby. Now scram before I step on you." The footage played until the revolving door stopped spinning and the lobby stood empty. Then Brielle paused it. Derek's frozen grin filled the screen. His living face, in the chair beside the podium, was the color of wet cement. Brielle didn't look at him. She addressed the room. "That woman was me. The woman he called a roach. The woman he said reeked. The woman he told to crawl back to her hole. The woman whose skin he mocked. That was the granddaughter of the man who painted these walls. The daughter of the man who grew this chain to 10 properties. The CEO who built it to 14. That was me." Click. Grace's check-in report. 22 minutes. 2 forms of ID. 2 credit cards. Phone verification. Beside it, the white couple. 4 minutes. 1 driver's license. Smiles. A murmur ran through the room. The front desk agents shifted in their seats. They knew. They'd been following Derek's protocols. They'd known it was wrong. They'd done it anyway. Click. Room assignments over 3 weeks. Every black guest downgraded. Parking structure views. Service elevator adjacency. Not one received the room they booked. Click. The complaint log. 2 columns side by side. Derek's sanitized version. 4 complaints. The original, 19. 15 erased. 11 from black or brown guests. 3 naming Derek. 1 using the word afraid. Click. Clara's hair memo. Derek's handwriting in the margin. Non-negotiable. 1 week. Clara let out a sound. Not a cry, not a word. Something between the two. The woman next to her put an arm around her shoulders. Click. Tanya's transfer order. Beside it, her guest satisfaction scores. Highest on staff. 11 handwritten thank you notes. 1 from a guest who'd written, "Tanya is the reason we come back every year." Tanya opened her eyes. She read the note on the screen. Her lip trembled once. Then she set her jaw and didn't look away. Click. The canceled family reunion. 32 people. All black. Scheduling conflict. Next to it, the ballroom calendar. Empty. The entire weekend. Not a single booking. Click. Harold Owens photos. 4 frames, stacked face down on a break room shelf, replaced by a poster that read, "Excellence is a habit." Jalen, the 19-year-old bellhop, stood up from his chair. He didn't say anything. He just stood, like he couldn't sit through that slide, like his body refused to stay seated while the founder's face was stacked on a shelf. After a moment, he sat back down. His hands were shaking. Brielle let the silence hold for 10 seconds. Then she turned to Derek. He was unrecognizable. The Navy suit that had made him feel untouchable 3 hours ago now hung on him like a costume. His gold cufflinks caught the light, but he didn't shine. The portfolio he'd prepared, his achievements, his numbers, his vision, lay closed on his lap like a book no one would ever read. "Mr. Lawson," Brielle said, "would you like to respond?" He opened his mouth. Nothing. Closed it. Tried again. I didn't know who you..." "Would it have mattered?" She took 1 step toward him. "If you'd known I was the owner, would you have spoken to me differently? Would you have treated Grace differently? Tanya? Clara? Would you have given that family their reunion back?" Silence. "You didn't throw me out because you didn't know who I was. You threw me out because of what I look like, because of the color of my skin, because in your mind, a black woman in a simple dress couldn't possibly belong in a lobby this beautiful. That's not a mistake, Mr. Lawson. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's who you are." She turned to the staff. "I want every person in this room to hear what I'm about to say. What happened to me happens every single day. In hotels, in restaurants, in offices, in hospitals. People who look like me walk into spaces we've earned and are told, with words or with looks or with silence, that we don't belong. My grandfather spent his entire life fighting that lie. He built this place so that no one would ever feel what he felt when they slammed those doors in his face. And in 3 weeks, one man tried to undo 60 years of that promise." She nodded to Wallace Grant. Her attorney stood, walked to Derek, set 3 documents on the table in front of him, one by one. Termination letter effective immediately. Notice of investigation under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And a preservation order for every file, email, and communication you've touched since your first day. Derek took the papers with both hands. They rattled against each other. Brielle looked at him one final time. On Tuesday, you asked me if I was deaf or just slow. She held his gaze. I'm neither, Mr. Lawson. I'm patient, and I remember every word. She turned to the staff. One more thing. She looked at the door, at Vivian Porter, still standing there, manila folder against her chest. Vivian, come up here, please. Vivian Porter walked to the front of the ballroom the way a person walks back into a house they were locked out of. Steady, upright, eyes forward. She passed Derek's chair without a glance. Brielle stepped aside and gave her the podium. Vivian set her manila folder down, smoothed the first page, a habit from 12 years of paperwork at this hotel. She looked out at the staff. Her staff. Most of you know me, she said. I was your assistant general manager for 12 years. I trained most of you. I covered your shifts when your kids were sick. I held a bucket under a burst pipe on the 3rd floor for 3 hours in 2019 while maintenance fixed it. I cried when we got our first 5-star rating. Some of you saw me. I didn't care. She paused. 3 weeks ago, I was fired. Not for performance, not for misconduct. I was fired because a new manager walked in and decided I didn't fit his vision of what this hotel should look like. She let that land. He called it restructuring, but every person in this room knows what it really was. She held up the folder. 14 pages. Names, dates, room numbers, conversations I overheard, policies I was told to enforce that I knew were wrong. I wrote every word, not for revenge, but because this name on the wall doesn't belong to one man. It belongs to all of us, and someone was destroying it. She looked at Derek. He couldn't meet her eyes. I wrote it because Ms. Owens asked me to, and because Harold Owens, the man whose photos you stacked face down on a shelf, deserved better than silence.
She stepped back.
Brielle touched her shoulder. Vivian nodded once and walked to the front row. Brielle turned to Derek. Mr. Lawson, security will escort you to collect your belongings. 15 minutes. Your credentials were deactivated at 9 a.m. Email, phone, parking, terminated. Questions go to Mr. Grant. Derek stood. The documents in his hands were crumpled and damp from his grip. He looked at Brielle. I'll sue.
Wallace Grant didn't look up.
You're welcome to. We have HD security footage with full audio. A documented pattern of racial discrimination spanning 3 weeks. 15 deleted complaints. 14 pages of testimony. Mystery shopper reports. Room data showing systematic downgrading of black guests. A handwritten memo ordering employees to change their natural hair. And the termination of a 12-year employee on day 4 without cause. He snapped the briefcase shut. Call your lawyer.
We'll be here. Derek picked up his portfolio,
The one with his victory speech, the one he'd printed 3 copies of, and walked toward the door. 2 security guards fell in beside him, the same team he'd threatened to call on Brielle 5 days earlier. They walked him through the corridor, past the break room where Harold's photos used to hang, through the lobby, past the wingback chair, past the front desk, past the gilded letters on the wall. Owens.
He didn't look at them.
He looked at the marble floor. The floor Harold Owens had chosen himself in 1987. The floor Derek had walked across every morning like he owned it. The revolving door pushed him out into the sunlight. The same door Brielle had walked through on Tuesday. The same sidewalk. Except she had left with quiet dignity. He stumbled. Back in the ballroom, Brielle addressed the staff one final time.
I owe you an apology.
Not for what Mr. Lawson did. That's on him. But my company hired him. Our vetting failed. For 3 weeks, you came to work under a man who made you feel less than what you are. That is my responsibility. She looked at Clara. Your hair is beautiful. It has always been beautiful. That memo is gone. The policy behind it is gone. And as long as my name is on that wall, it will never come back.
Clara broke.
She covered her face and sobbed, raw, shaking sobs that filled the ballroom. The woman beside her pulled her close and held on. She looked at Tanya. Day shift, effective immediately. Your satisfaction scores, the ones he never read, go in this year's annual report. By name. Tanya pressed her lips together, nodded once. Her eyes were red, but she held. She held the way Brielle had held in the lobby, the way generations of women who looked like them had always held.
Brielle looked at the room.
Vivian Porter is your new general manager, effective today. The ballroom broke open. Not applause, something deeper. Relief. Release. 12 years of earned respect crashing back into the room like a wave. Jalen stood first, clapped once, twice, then Nora, then Clara, tears still streaming, then Tanya. Row by row, 87 people rose, and the sound filled the ballroom and poured into the hallway and reached the lobby where the chandelier still scattered its rainbows and the gardenias still bloomed, and the name on the wall still said what it had said for 62 years. Owens. Vivian stood in the front row. She didn't speak. Tears ran down her face and she let them. 12 years in this building. Fired 3 weeks ago. Standing here now as its leader. Brielle watched from the podium. She didn't clap. She didn't cry. She stood with her hands at her sides, her grandfather's name behind her, and let the moment be what it was. Some things don't need words. The story didn't stay in the ballroom. A guest named Denise had recorded 40 seconds of Tuesday's lobby incident on her phone. She posted it Friday night with 3 words. Watch this, please. By Saturday morning, 600,000 views. By Monday, 4.7 million. CNN picked it up, then NBC, then The Washington Post. The New York Times ran a profile on Harold Owens, the man who built what they told him he couldn't. Hashtag Justice for Brielle trended for 3 days. Hashtag Know Who You're Talking To became a meme. T-shirts were printed. Comment sections exploded with the same line over and over. She owned the building. He called her a roach. Derek Lawson's name trended too. Not the way he'd imagined. He deleted his LinkedIn within 48 hours. No hotel chain returned his calls. No recruiter reached out. Last anyone heard, he'd moved back to Tucson. The industry forgot him in a month. The internet didn't.
6 months later.
The Owens Grand was rated #1 in guest satisfaction across the Mid-Atlantic region. Vivian Porter had rebuilt the culture from the inside out. Staff turnover hit its lowest point in a decade. Harold's photos were back on the break room wall, reframed with a new plaque. Our founder, our standard, our family. Tanya was back on the day shift, promoted to senior supervisor. Her guest thank you notes filled an entire binder. Clara still wore her braids. Every day. Nobody said a word, except guests who told her she looked beautiful. Nora was promoted to assistant general manager. She'd earned it long before Tuesday, but that phone call, those 2 words to Charlotte, changed everything. Jalen, the bellhop who'd stood up in the ballroom, was enrolled in a hospitality management program. Brielle was paying his tuition. She hadn't told anyone. He found out when the registrar mentioned the donor's name. He sat in the break room and stared at Harold's photograph for a very long time. On a Tuesday morning, 6 months to the day, Brielle Owens walked into the Owens Grand Hotel. Same linen dress, same flat shoes, same paperback. She sat in the wingback chair by the east window, crossed her ankles, opened her book. Nora saw her from reception, smiled, picked up the phone. Miss Porter, she's here. Vivian came down from the 4th floor, walked across the lobby she now ran, stopped in front of the chair. Welcome home, Ms. Owens. Brielle looked up, smiled. The first real smile she'd let herself feel in this building since her grandfather died. It's good to be home. Above the concierge station, the gilded letters caught the morning light. Owens. There since 1962. Not going anywhere. What would you have done if someone kicked you out of your own building? Drop it in the comments. I need to hear it. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it. Send it to someone who needs it today. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, because there are more stories like this, and they deserve to be told.